When I say FPS, you say Doom. Everyone and their brother Timmy knows its influence on the genre that followed. It was so influential that first-person shooters were originally just called Doom clones around the time it released. And these Doom clones were actually pretty sick. Games like Blood and Heretic are well-made shooters with a personality of their own, even if they felt pretty derivative.
Here's Johnny.
Now, I wasn't around for this era of games because I'm a little baby man, but I still really enjoy this era. These episodic keycard collecting level-based games just have a certain flow to them that fell out of popularity as the FPS genre evolved. Until the last couple years, a handful of indie projects have come out that would fit right in next to the original Doom and Quake, but still create something unique out of that inspiration. And I wanted to go through a few of these games and talk about them for a bit, because I started playing a lot of them recently and I ended up enjoying almost all of them more than I expected. So here's a handful of games from the recent retro FPS revival.
Kill the intruder.
If I made this video without starting on Dusk, I think I'd be committing a crime. Dusk is one of the best shooters I've ever played. Like, it's up there right next to my favorites, Half-Life 2 and Chex Quest, the true cult classic. The movement in Dusk is exactly my kind of jam because my brain is extremely smooth and I need to move fast and jump constantly. So here I am hopping around, playing the game, just enjoying it, when I accidentally discover you can also do flips while you're in the air. Why isn't this in more games? I want this in every game now. So the movement's great, but how are the weapons? Well, they're what you would expect from a 90s shooter, but they're built to perfection. The shotgun, rocket launcher, super shotgun, all of the mainstays are here, but none of them feel pointless or weak. Even the sword is fun as hell to use and it has multiple attacks and a block. It's just super cool. Some enemies are easier to take down with specific weapons, so switching between them feels natural. They also provide more movement options. Obviously you can rocket jump, how could you not? But you can also crossbow jump, which is pretty different and useful for gliding around in the air like a big scary bird that has guns. So yeah, the weapons in Dusk are great, but where it really shines is its level design. In episode 1, the levels are mostly grounded in reality, other than like the enemies being cultists and chainsaw murderers. But once you get about halfway through episode 2 of the game, it starts to feel like this descent into insanity. Each level is trying to one-up the last, creating some of the most mind-bending, one-of-a-kind level design I've ever seen in an FPS. And it somehow manages to achieve this repeatedly, creating memorable moment after moment in almost every level that leaves you wanting to know more. As you go through episode 3, more pieces of a vague story are put together, and it's all super well timed, unintrusive, and satisfying. The story they're throwing at you isn't cutscenes or taking away from the gameplay, like some annoying ass shoehorned shooter story. It actually adds to the environment Dusk creates, making it one of the most satisfying games to beat. Oh, and the soundtrack is great. It's around 2 hours, and all of the tracks are like built to fit in these levels. And it's really well done. You can just feel the effort that was put in for that. A lot of these episodic shooters get really repetitive after the first few episodes, but Dusk continues to impress level after level. This is a retro 90s tribute that takes inspiration from a large pool of games to create something new. It feels like a blend of Half-Life, Stalker, Blood, and Quake put together to make this sick-ass unique game that takes bits and pieces to build something truly unique, and I cannot wait for more Dusk. Ultrakill is a game I still really can't believe is real sometimes. I imagine the people designing this sat down and asked one question for every single design choice. How do we make the player feel like a complete badass? How do you regain health? Not by collecting a bunch of little pickups around the map like a little item gremlin. You regain health by killing enemies and collecting their blood. You are a machine that is fueled by murder, which is the most metal shit on the planet, but it also really impacts the flow of the gameplay. The player is forced to get close and personal in fights while also trying to keep distance, creating the most hyperactive shooter I think I've ever played. Okay, so you're basically a blood-fueled lawnmower. That's pretty cool. How do you take the weapons you'd expect and make them feel even better? Well, for starters, the pistol can dispense coins, which isn't very cool until you realize that you can shoot them out of the air to deflect them into enemies. I can't believe this is a real weapon in a game. I can't believe it still. The shotgun's alternative fire can shoot grenades, combining the two best weapons in any video game into one. And then there's the nail gun, which, by the way, is already a gun that shoots nails. How can you make that any more badass? Well, your alternative fire shoots a magnetic spike that attracts the nails, creating like a vortex of nails. Like, just look at these dudes getting annihilated by nails. It's actually mind-boggling that a human being can think of a weapon like this. Like, they have to be the second coming of Christ. This is almost as brilliant a creation as pizza rolls. Playing Ultrakill is like not having caffeine for your entire life and then one day deciding to down 4 monsters. It's like playing speed chess with guns. There is so much sensory intake constantly and so many choices to make in a fight, but when you do something right, it feels like the planets are aligning and God is shining down upon you. And then there's the soundtrack. The music feels like a blend of Doom, Castlevania, and Undertale. Is there a sentence that can sell a soundtrack to anyone faster than that one? Probably not. It also loosely follows the levels of the game, using the music to often amplify the impact of encounters. Like this area that's blue and sunny, looking like the Bliss Windows XP wallpaper, has this soft piano-driven track playing over it. Until the first combat encounter, where the song gets completely torn apart, filled with hyperactive drums and massive distorted bass, and what remains of the piano track is scattered throughout as samples. This song hits like a goddamn train. And no, I don't mean the Hey Soul Sister Drops of Jupiter train, no, they're terrible. Some of my favorite tracks are Shattered Illusion, Castlevania, Panic Betrayer, and the Cyber Grind. Speaking of the Cyber Grind, that's the track that plays in the Endless mode. I usually don't like Endless modes in games, but I felt like I should bring it up because it's actually pretty cool. The map is like this grid that reforms after each wave, and it's actually really fun. And the game's Devil May Cry style score counter makes Endless mode way more engaging. Currently, Ultrakill is in early access, and there's only a small portion of the game available. But it really does play like no other game, and I can't recommend it enough for its gameplay and music. If you enjoyed Heretic or just want to be a magic shooting fool, a Medieval will probably be up your alley. This game has a decent selection of weapons and a ton of stylish episodes. All of these screenshots are from the same game, and it's astonishing how visually dynamic it is. The episode Solar Solstice stands out to me with its beautiful sunset colors and skyboxes, and Arcane Expanse is some of the most magical level design I've ever experienced. Almost every frame of this game is screenshot worthy. Even the weapons look pretty slick too. I think my favorite out of all of them has to be the Celestial Claw. This is the best looking rocket launcher you can find in a game, and it shoots planets. You can even shoot Earth out of it. Whoops. Out of all of these retro FPS games, this is definitely my favorite visually, but where it shines in style, it lacks in gameplay for me. I found some of the weapons feel kinda underwhelming. Some of the enemies can be pretty annoying, bosses can be easily cheesed, and as much as I've loved the level design, there are these really thin paths that you have to walk on while also trying to dodge enemy attacks. And that's not really a fun thing to do when I'm standing on a thin-ass bridge. The highlight of a Medieval's combat for me is the soul power system. It does the video game thing where you fill a power bar and then right-click to activate the power, but each weapon has its own unique alternate fire mode, and they're all really powerful and feel impactful. Also, I just wanted to mention that the soundtrack was made by the same artist who made Dusk's, and it sounds completely different from Dusk. You would have no clue that the same person made both of these soundtracks. And I hope I can hear more music from Andrew like this. It's really good. Here's one of my personal favorite tracks from the beginning of Arcane Expanse. Even if I found some of this game underwhelming, I still enjoyed the majority of a Medieval. The levels are stunning, the music is great, and there's a lot of content in this game, with DLC coming in the future. If you're not into the colorful scenery of a Medieval, hrot might be more your speed. Also, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, sorry. There are a ton of retro FPS games on Steam that kinda blow chunks, and I was pleasantly surprised by hrot. That's because it doesn't blow chunks. The overall design here feels very tried and true. It's extremely reminiscent of Quake. Like, some of these enemies are actually just the enemies from Quake. This guy's just an ogre. These floating combine head looking dudes act exactly like Scrags. The weapons are pretty much what you'd expect, but my favorites were the shotgun, pistols, and SMG. The only weird weapon was the landmines. I barely even used them for anything but opening secrets. One thing I gotta commend the dev for is how much variety these levels hold with such a limited color palette. None of them really suffer from the retro FPS maze confusion. It's all pretty straightforward and easy to get around. From a quick glance, hrot may seem dark and gloomy, but this game's pretty ridiculous. You can kiss this picture of this dude, flush toilets. Some of the bosses are completely insane, and you can ride this little moped thing and hit people with it. The cherry on top for me was getting to the credits of the first episode, and they're just a recipe for beef stroganoff. Like, what the hell does this even mean? hrot is currently in early access, and only one episode is available, but I'd say it meets that price point already, and I'm excited to see what's next. I feel like I haven't seen many people talking about Project Warlock. I played this game a couple years back, and I wanted to give it a mention. It leans more towards Doom or Heretic and less Quake, but it introduces a lot of modern game design and replayability. For example, you can upgrade your player, weapons, and spells. These change how you play the game drastically, and it's fun to try out different upgrades when replaying it. I never got most of the spells because they share upgrade points with the weapons, and obviously getting weapon upgrades always felt superior in an FPS. I kinda wish the spells just had their own separate type of upgrade point or something. The episodes go all over the place and it's great. You start in a foggy medieval setting, then you go to a tundra that reminds me of The Thing, and you got some pyramids next, and there's a ton more that I just don't want to spoil. One thing about these retro FPS games is they're filled with tons of visual settings to customize. All of the previously mentioned games have some form of these settings. like Dusk has a setting to make the game look like clown vomit, but none of these games take it as far as Project Warlock. I mean, just look at the shit I can do to make this game look different. I can make it look like a camera in Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh no! Oh, that's bad! I understand what I need to do. I need to watch the cams so that they don't come after me. What's missing? Oh, hi!
Hi, Mark. How's it going?
There you are!
Yeah, I'm here playing... What?
Okay.
What are you talking about? Yeah, it's not really important to the gameplay in any way, and it actually might make playing the game worse in some scenarios, but I love excessive customization like this. I can play Project Warlock Game Boy Edition, and it's cool as hell that I can do that. Here's some honorable mentions. These are the games that I thought people would bring up in the comments and be like, why didn't you play this one? It's really good. And I'll be like, I've played them, they're just okay. First up is Proteus. This kind of feels like an attempt to modernize Doom, but still maintain a retro look. The visuals are really cool, taking 3D models and making them look pseudo 2D-ish. I don't really know how to describe the effect, but it's really unique. The weapons are good, and I enjoyed the feel of pretty much all of them. My main problem with Proteus is the levels just get extremely samey super fast, and it starts to become a slog to get through, even though there's only a few levels in the game right now. I also found the checkpoint system really hand-holdy, and I didn't really like it. I just like quick saves. I don't know why I'd want to have this checkpoint stuff. Regardless, if you're into Doom, this game's totally up your alley, and I'd recommend giving it a shot. Next up is Wrath. This is very reminiscent of Quake. It's almost like it's built on a modified version of the Quake engine or something. I absolutely adore this game visually. The weapon models look so sick, and they feel fantastic. Just look at this shotgun and how it sounds. It's just really well made. But man, the levels in this game are just not my thing, and the enemies are really underwhelming. Each level just feels really long-winded and confusing, and it just feels like they go on for too long. Now, I didn't get through all of the levels that are in the game, and I might give it another shot because everyone else seems to really enjoy this one, but I'm just not a fan of it from what I've played. Lastly, we have Cruelty Squad. I don't really know how to introduce someone to this other than just showing it for a few seconds, so here it is. This is a tactical shooter boasting bizarre graphics and filled with corporate humor. The gameplay is a bit wonky and confusing, but once you get used to it, it's pretty playable. It's just kind of hard to tell which people are civilians or enemies. And the dialogue from civilians in the game is just like tons of corporate commentary that's super funny. I just ended up talking to people in this game instead of like actually doing the mission. One of the features that really took me by surprise is when I pressed tab to see like the level stats, because in a few of these games that's how you do that, and it brought up this stock market. Yeah, there's an in-game stock market and you can make money off of it. Why not, I guess. At the time of recording this, I've gotten through about 4 or 5 of the levels in the game, and I want to play more. I just kind of need to do it in short periods of time because it's really difficult to play. I'm really prone to migraines, and believe it or not, this is a little headache-inducing. I'm pretty sure just by looking at this game, you can decide whether or not it's your kind of jam. When games look like this visually, I'm just instantly intrigued, like Post Void or Hylix. So yeah, check out Cruelty Squad. So I think that wraps everything up. If you're looking to give one of these games a shot, I'd say Dusk and Ultrakill are great places to start. I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of playing these games recently, and it's exciting to see what's coming in the future. With Gloomwood in development and more episodes from Ultrakill and hrot down the line, it's looking like an interesting couple years for fans of this genre. If you enjoyed this video, I've got a series about Deep Rock Galactic and also a video on Bug Snacks that I think is pretty cool. Thank you so much for watching. Rock and Stone.